blending of human capital and data analytics in a world of robotic animation. My guest is Kevin Massey. He is Senior Director of Strategic Analytics and Data Science with Ryder Supply Chain Solutions. Hello, Kevin.
Hello.
Thanks very much for being with me. This is a very important topic these days in the world of automation robotics. Help me to understand, what are the respective roles of humans and robotics in logistics and supply chain management today?
Sure. I'll start with the robotic side. The view of robotics is really to be there to assist the humans in the supply chain environment. So we're really looking for those activities that are repetitive or of safety concerns, and we really want those to assist the humans while the humans are really doing all the complex problem solving.
Okay, that's an interesting perspective, since the myth of it is that robots are coming in to take our jobs and there won't be a person in sight in the factory, in the distribution center, in the logistics center. Not true, you're telling me.
Well, I think if you go back to the days of manufacturing, everybody thought that robotics was going to take over the world and we'd have no more people assembling our cars or our refrigerators. And that simply just isn't true, right? Those facilities are still staffed with thousands of people. And there are great things that robotics can really do to assist those humans, but we still need the humans there. So that's still a vital part of what's going to happen for the foreseeable future.
Given that we do need the humans there, the challenge begins how to make humans and robots work together smoothly and efficiently. Tell me how that happens.
So yeah, that's always the challenge. And so especially in the world of supply chain, you see a lot of what we call cobots kind of being developed, and those robots that are working alongside the human beings. And so that is really kind of the space that I know Ryder is getting a lot into, but as well as many other folks as well, of how do we have those robotics sit alongside human beings, assisting them with those repetitive tasks, making sure that they can stay safe in the environment they're in, and really making the human being more efficient by taking care of those items which are repetitive and they may not be necessarily good at in the long run.
In the early days of robotics and manufacturing in the plant, the robots had to be caged because there was a danger of their coming into contact with people. And now we're talking about these facilities where the robots are you're right with the robots. And so I assume this means that the robots are equipped with certain systems that helps them to avoid collisions and damage to humans and stop humans from damaging the robots too.
That's exactly right. You're seeing a lot of those more integrated systems being put on robotics, whether that be vision or proximity sensors in some way, shape, or form that allow the robot to know where the human is and can actually steer clear of the human being. It's not unlike what you're seeing today in the world of autonomous vehicles.
There is no, as I understand it, no fixed plan for exactly what a robot does versus what a human does. But I think you sort of clued us into where it goes when you say that the robot is doing the numbingly repetitive type of tasks that humans are neither fit for nor want to do. So what kind of tasks would those be? And then what would a human be doing that is best done by a human?
Sure. So if you think about the process of kitting is a good example, where we're literally trying to take items from many packages and put them into a single pack, right? So that's a pretty repetitive task. It's something that can be easily identified by a robot, of whether that be bottles of a sports drink, or whether that be, computer chips, whatever we're trying to package together. Those things are easily identified and being able to put in the correct packaging with the correct amount. And robots are really good at that, right? Humans are good to a point, right? But then, most often we get wrong features put into the pack, or we get too many or too few, and you're having to sort through those, and you have a lot of error checking when you have humans involved. And robotics tends to help us solve that type of problem. Right? When you get into the human being part of this, as anybody who's been in a warehouse, there's always some kind of urgent matter that's happening. And how do we scramble to deploy to get product out the door, right? And that's something actually robots, to be able to assemble to do that, aren't very good at, right? Human beings, to be able to, to have that complex planning, right, and be able to deliver that, that's where you want the people to be there to be able to solve those kinds of problems.
There is no static state of operations within a facility these days where the same thing happens in the same way every day. As you say, there are emergencies, there are sudden surges in peak volumes and dips and the like. I guess that's what a person does best is adjust, correct?
That's correct.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. On the other hand, when you do have a peak season, rather than add a whole bunch of human bodies to the facility, you can staff up more easily with robots, can you not?
That's very true. We can staff up more easily with robots. They can actually help the humans gain more efficiency in those peak times.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really the value that they bring. And we're not constantly having to ebb and flow our human capital.
Yeah. Now, one thing that automation and robotics does well these days is handle the immense amounts of data that come down the pike in the logistics and supply chain world. So, how do we work with the automation side in order to deal with that data? I mean, it takes it in, and then it gives us to us for interpretation and action. I mean, who does what when it comes to data analytics and actionable data?
Sure. The very first thing you have to do when you get in these complex environments, and I've seen it all throughout my career in various stages, where the first thing is you have to have a plan. Like any organization, when you're getting into robotics or you're going to be getting into a point where you're going to be generating data, it's what's your plan? What do you want to accomplish with that information? And so when you kind of have that plan in place, now you can start dividing it into what does my IT function need to have? And then how do we support it from an analytics and data science perspective, which comes into the point of how do we get that information in to solve problems? Like, what are we really trying to do with that? And as you can build data models that become simply of models to be able to form around the business, you can actually put that back into the business hands and allow them to solve their own problems, while you have more analytics and data science functions on the back end solving more complex issues, or looking at how do we get into a space of predictive modeling to even gain more efficiencies in that space.
As you go from descriptive to predictive to prescriptive, even at that point, you're not letting the automation system take over and make the decisions, are you? There's still a human at the other end to make that ultimate decision.
That's exactly right. There's always going to be a human at the other end making those decisions. And even if it's to saying what model we're going to deploy at what time for what function.
Yeah. Is it important, however, for the humans to know how the automated system came to the conclusions that it came to when it is making recommendations? It might, is it a black box, or do we need to know exactly how it came about that decision?
This is something that's been interesting in the industry for a long time, and it's actually becoming increasingly more important for the human to understand more about how the model is making its decision. This is something you see a lot of tech companies working on today, from Google to Microsoft. How do they move from black box to gray box to white box models? And so when you get into the space of predictive model, yes, by having a predictive model, it can get you some efficiency gain. But if you're really looking to problem solve and you're really looking to optimize, the understanding of how that model makes its decisions, it's actually going to give you more key insights into how to change your processes to gain even more efficiencies in that flow.
Speaking of predictive, I am now asking a human being to engage in predictive analytics, and that is to ask you what you think is the future of robotics in your world. What additional tasks might they take on? How might they look different in the years ahead? What's your view?
So my view of how this is going to change is I think you're going to see many different types of robots entering a facility. So I don't think it's going to be any one kind of static form that these are going to take. You're going to see many that are going to work completely alongside the human being. We're going to see things like drones that are going to be able to be above the facility taking on tasks. You're going to be able to see a lot more, hopefully, in the functions of counting and optimizing based on that. That's really going to be able to help optimize the flow of a warehouse facility.
Hey, Kevin Massey of Ryder Supply Chain Solutions, thank you so much for sharing your insights on this world of human capital, data analytics, and how humans are going to work with robots and now and in the future. I really appreciate that conversation. I'd like now to turn to Ryder Supply Chain Solutions itself. Tell me a little bit about what the company is doing these days in helping its customers to achieve success in what are uniquely difficult times.
Yeah, Ryder is doing a lot of activity in many different fronts. So we have we have programs going on, everything from Ryder Share, which is how our customers get a bigger view into the services that we provide them, which is becoming ever increasingly more important. So that customers understand what we provide and the value that we're providing them. We even get more into labor management. So we have an OpsBox program that's internal to Ryder, where we're actually understanding more about how labor operates within our facilities and being able to use that data to help optimize. And then in the world of robotics, we're utilizing, much like we just talked about, how we get cobots and drones and working with our sensors and tracking, being able to count better. All those aspects Ryder is taking on, and we're doing them kind of all concurrently. We're making a big push in the technology space to really optimize how we deliver our services to our customers.
I'm especially interested in what you said about the labor side of it, because labor is such a huge issue right now. Finding the talent, the skills gap, the body gap that we're facing right now. You're saying that your automation systems can help to address that?
Yeah, so our systems we have on the back end, especially when we start getting into predictive models and using some of that information, we're using data science today to better understand how we attract and retain labor in our forces, in our warehouses and trucking.
Yeah. Did you ever think that a logistics provider such as yourself, or a supply chain provider such as yourself, compared with years ago when it was all about the physical aspect of moving product from A to B, would be so dependent on technology? Isn't that so different from the role of the original, what we call the 3PL way back in the day?
Yeah, it's very different than where we were, 10, 20 years ago. And data really has taken over how we view our business. And I think it's taken over how many people view other businesses as well. It really becomes the currency in which we're trying to play.
Yeah, you can't succeed in this world unless you're a provider that has that level of technological expertise and commitment. Kevin Massey, I want to thank you once again with Ryder Supply Chain Solutions for talking to me about the issue of human capital, data analytics, and automation, and also something about Ryder Supply Chain Solutions itself. Thank you very much for being with me today.
Thanks for having me.